If you had asked me last offseason on whether Coby White was going to remain on the Bulls after his rookie contract, I would have said with absolute certainty that he would not. In fact, I thought Coby was going to be traded last trade deadline or during the offseason, partially because of the rise of Dosunmu at that time, the fact that the Bulls added Caruso and Lonzo Ball in that season, and even though Lonzo had gotten injured halfway through the year, the thought was that he was going to be returning before the Bulls hit the playoffs last season. And with Coby's overall play being stagnant, not really improving aspects of his game as it related to his defense, his playmaking, shot selection, and his handles, it was almost a foregone conclusion that Coby wasn't going to be a part of the Bulls' long-term plans, especially with how crowded the backcourt was on that roster, with Coby being the odd man out. But fast forward to this offseason, and it's now become a foregone conclusion that the Bulls will be doing everything in their power to retain Coby White with his improved defense, ball handling, shot selection, court vision, and just his overall hustle that he's been bringing to the court. And of course, let's also not forget that Coby White is one of the few shooters on this team, albeit an inconsistent shooter at times. Defenses still have to respect Coby when he's on the perimeter, and that's critical for the Bulls' floor spacing when most guys on the roster aren't seen as threats from outside. But as much as the Bulls front office might want to keep Coby White, the question is, what is Coby's market value when he hits restricted free agency, and can the Bulls realistically be able to afford him if they plan to also re-sign guys like Vucevic and Dosunmu? Well, that's what we'll be talking about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, when the Bulls drafted Coby White 7th overall in 2019, the thought was that Coby White would eventually become the Bulls' starting point guard for the future, as Chris Dunn was showing inconsistencies on the court, as well as having his own challenges staying healthy and remaining on the actual court. And while Coby White had a solid rookie season and earned himself a starting spot in his second year, it was becoming clear that Coby White wasn't probably a starting caliber point guard in the NBA, or at least for a winning team if the Bulls wanted to eventually get there. And when the Bulls signed Lonzo Ball, Coby White was moved to the bench and struggled a bit adjusting to that new role, especially considering he was injured that whole offseason and to start the year, which didn't allow him to work and get run with the new look roster. It also didn't help that the Bulls had a rising rookie in Dosunmu who was outplaying Coby for minutes. But going into this season, we really saw a new Coby White. Still inconsistent as a player on offense, but a much more focused player on defense, a much better ball handler and slasher to the basket, and a much more patient Coby White when it came to facilitating on the court for others. Coby's numbers overall were down, finishing with less than 10 points per game for the first time in his career, but the eye test tells you everything about Coby White and how he has improved as a player with his maturity on the court. Far from a perfect player, but a significantly improved player, and given he's only 23, there is still room for him to continue to get better. Coby White also closed out the season incredibly strong, and was actually the only guy that showed up big in that fourth quarter of that final playing game against the Miami Heat, hitting big three after big three until Billy Donovan decided to bench him for Patrick Beverley. Yeah. And with his improved play, especially in the final games of the season, it likely raised Coby's overall value on the free agency market. But what is Coby really worth, based on what others around his level have been getting paid, and also based on his future potential as he heads into his prime? And I've seen a lot of numbers thrown around on NBA Twitter, from some saying he's only worth $10 million a year, which mind you is basically the qualifying offer for Coby at $9.9 million, to some saying the man is worth $12 million, $14 million, $15 million. I've even seen some say that Coby will get a package deal in the range of $18 million a year just because teams around the NBA value shooting so much. First, let me just say, Coby White will not be getting a deal worth that much at $18 million. It's just not happening. That said, Coby's value might be higher than you think, and it's going to give the Bulls some tough decisions to make on whether or not they can afford him, especially when we know getting approval to go over the luxury tax isn't going to be an option. To draw some comparisons, here are various restricted free agents from this past season who received extensions, or players from Coby's draft class who received early extensions. I'm not going to include some of the obvious ones that just aren't on Coby's level in terms of his caliber, like John Morant, Zion Williamson, who both got max contract extensions to their deals, but you look at a guy like DeAndre Hunter as an example, who received a 4-year, $90 million extension. Now, Hunter is a better player than Coby White, but I wouldn't say he's leaps and bounds better. Obviously, Tyler Hero got a fat contract extension, same with Jordan Poole, which is already starting to look regrettable as a contract for the Warriors. Kevin Huerter, who was a restricted free agent last season, signed a 4-year, $65 million deal. Colin Sexton, sign and trade, 4-year, $72 million. Not that I would consider Sexton or Kevin Huerter on the same tier as Coby White because they're better scorers overall. Huerter is obviously a much better and more consistent outside shooter, but for both of those guys, you're talking between $16 to $18 million a year respectively, and this is from last offseason. Obviously, the salary cap will be increasing So you're going to see a slight uptick in overall contract values. And here's the thing about Coby White. Teams know, or at least I would think competent GMs know, that he can do more than his current stat line. They know he can score at a higher volume, they know he can rack up assists when his overall usage is up, and the fact that he significantly improved his turnover rate when he's handling the ball is key for teams looking for a ball handling guard. And then the other benefit is Coby can also play off the ball. He's not one of these players that is only effective when the ball is in his hands. He's proven in a number of different roles he's had in Chicago that he can play both with and without the ball. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls, instead of just making Coby an offer, giving him a big fat payday to retain him, they'll just extend him the qualifying offer, which is a little less than $10 million. They do that to make him a restricted free agent, and they see what the market dictates for Coby White. Because to be honest, it's really hard to gauge what Coby's market value is, and it's for a few reasons. One, there are not a lot of teams out there that actually have cap space to sign him, and those that do aren't really looking for guards. And then three, he's going to be going up against strong competition for other potential restricted free agents like Austin Reeves, PJ Washington, Cam Johnson, even Rui Hachimura. So it might be one of those situations where the Bulls say, all right, go out there and get an offer, and we'll match. And it's possible that there just aren't going to be a lot of offers out there because teams' cap sheets are all dried up signing other free agents. Like, even despite the fact that Coby has improved, there has to be enough money to be able to go around to actually offer him a big payday. And for the Bulls, they're likely going to match whatever sheet he receives. I shouldn't say whatever, like if some team actually offers him in the range of $18 or $20 million, which won't happen because teams don't have that kind of money. And if they do, they're not going to be throwing it at Coby White. But yeah, the Bulls wouldn't match an offer sheet like that. They just can't. But I can see Coby getting somewhere in the range of $14 to $15 million a year, like on a 4-year deal, maybe 3 if there is some hesitation about signing him to a longer term contract. And the Bulls, who again, we talked about their salary cap situation, how they're going to be operating over the cap, which for re-signing Coby White doesn't affect their cap sheet in the sense that you're re-signing your own free agent, but what it does impact is the Bulls' overall payroll and the total amount that would exceed the luxury tax threshold, which is projected to be $162 million. And with the Bulls also wanting to re-sign Vucevic, you're going to get awfully close to that number depending on how high the offer sheet is for Coby that they would need to match, and of course, also what they end up paying Vucevic. And obviously, if they want to sign any other free agents too, you know, to actually make changes to round out the roster. Like, even if the Bulls re-sign all their free agents, they're going to be pretty close to the luxury tax line. And of course, as we've said countless times on the channel, Bulls already know this, the Bulls ownership is not going to pay the luxury tax under no circumstance. They paid it once in their history of owning the team. That even includes the 90s dynasty era. Not a chance they're paying it when they didn't even want to pay it for a championship caliber team. That's why it is going to make the offseason interesting for the Bulls and how much they're going to be willing to shell out for their own free agents. I do think Coby White at $14 to $15 million a year likely will be doable, and that will keep the Bulls under the tax line even with re-signing Vucevic. Not saying all this is ideal because it's leaning more towards just running this roster back, but at the same time, the Bulls don't really have a ton of options, as we have explained before in prior videos. Anyway, I would be curious to know what you guys think. What do you think is Coby's value as a free agent, and what type of contract do you see him receiving, whether it's from the Bulls or another team? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.